We've already doomed ourselves though, Gabe, because part of my thing is that you're not supposed to use your real name when you're like a creator,
Mhm.
and we do. So,
We do.
oh well.
It's like the Ghoul game, you know? That's how it is.
Mhm.
Which is, it just some people use their name, but they'll have, like, things a part of it, you know?
Yeah. No,
Like,
that's
people don't
real.
have our whole government out here.
Yeah, they don't have our government names. That's very valid. And they don't need
Exactly.
to.
No.
We don't exist.
Yeah, we are secret. So let me tell you about the film, which is what you're here to listen to.
Yes.
Is Cam? It is from 2018, which is not that long ago. We watched it like immediately, and now we're like in love. So, it is about Alice, an ambitious cam girl, wakes up one day to discover she's been replaced on her show with an exact replica of herself. It's directed by Daniel Goldhaber and written by Issa Mazai, Daniel Goldhaber, and Isabel Link Levy. And Issa Mazai, it was her story mostly, and then like she's
Mhm.
had help with the others. And so I'll talk a bit about kind of her contributions and why this film would not be what it is without her.
Mm.
Very honestly. So Cam is a really haunting film that gets increasingly more uncomfortable and terrifying in ways certain content creators and femme presenting people can feel at their core, which is why it was so horrifying. The film follows Cam girl Alice, a charming creator who specializes in intense but memorable experiences for her fans. She begins her shows playfully chatting with those in attendance, and she gives in to their requests, well paid for, as she spanks herself and coos at them. She's very like conversational, and I remember when we were watching it, I was just like, "That's a lot of work," to like, because you're like talking to yourself because they're just chatting on the like stream, and so she just like has to. You're like, "Oh no, don't say that," or like, "What do you guys
Yeah.
want?" Like she's talking to herself, and then Kat was like, "That's just Twitch streaming."
It is, yeah, 'cause you're, like, supposed to talk back to them when they chat with you, and you're like, "I don't know."
Like, what am I doing? Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
but
is
you
one of
really
the
do have to talk to yourself, and then especially because with the after effect where, like, you pull clips and stuff or whatever,
Mhm.
you need that entertainment interactivity. You have to act like people are there even if they're not.
Yeah, because I mean, what people are like, if they wanted the video game, they would just have the video game. They're paying for
Mhm.
you
To
because
play
the
it,
way
yeah.
that you are experiencing it, the conversations that you're having, you have this, like, connection to them, definitely plays into, the
Mhm.
accessibility, of the experience and all of that, and so, I agree, and I think, like, talking to ourselves is a big thing of why it was really hard to get into Twitch streaming. Like, we have a
Mhm.
Twitch channel, you can definitely check it out, it's, like, been dead for a minute, and a few times we play and people do get, like, a kick out of it.
Yeah,
Usually it's one of us playing a horror game, me being, like, terrified, and people think that's hilarious.
yeah.
Um,
You are really fun to watch when you play Twitch.
so, we could support our many ways that we've tried to stay relevant, and, um, Alice is very good at it. She is such a natural and just, like, it's, Madeline Brewer from, Handmaid's Tale, and she is so good. Like, she's an amazing actress, I've seen her in a lot of different things, and I don't think I've ever been disappointed, and she does such a remarkable job in this film, same way she, like, stole our hearts in the show, Handmaid's Tale. So Alice, her on-screen persona is Lola. And so Lola is performing, she like spanks herself, she's like giggling, and all is well until a new voice joins the chat demanding blood. Literally. Real uncomfortable, real fast. Caught slightly off guard, she quickly blocks him, only for him to rejoin as a new user. And he expresses that like she can't get rid of him. And there's this real fear that we see on her face. Like all of a sudden that like the the mask that she had on as Lola comes down, and she's, like, nervous, like, how easily it is that someone could just come in and derail her entire experience and her channel, like, this is hers, and this person just comes in here, and now it's his, and it's like, "What?" And so she gets really, really nervous. And he insists on violence using a mixture of emojis and obscene language while the other attendees begin to join in, like almost too quickly. they're like, "Oh, a knife, like, oh, violence. I didn't know that was on the table." And she's like, "Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Let's not, wish violence upon me, a real human being."
Yeah.
Um, and so Alice searches her chest of toys. She has this whole like bin of fun and withdraws a knife, kind of saying, like, "Is this what you want?" And then in a most intense opening scene, Alice slits her throat to the chorus of coin chimes. So they're paying all that money for
Yes.
her to kill herself. So she just does it, and you're like, "What? Are
This
we
is a
gonna
whole
cut?
movie. What do you mean?
Are we gonna cut to someone? Does she die at the beginning? And this whole time is Sixth Sense?"
Yeah.
Um, that's not the case. And after a few stressful moments, Alice rises and pulls the like silicone, like blood drenched piece from her neck and smiles because it was all part of her experience. She likes to do crazy things. Turns out it was her idea, which I think is funny. So giddily, after the stream, she chats with one of her regulars, Tinker, and celebrates her rise in the cam girl charts, which is like her big goal. But she's also worrying slightly at the easy viciousness of her viewers, that they had so clearly wanted to see her blood and just so easily. Like,
Yeah.
because she's like, "Oh, yeah, like I won." Like, she's feeling strong, but then she's also like, "What was that?" Like, we
Yeah.
planted that. And she was wholeheartedly expecting people to be uncomfortable. And they were like, "Yeah."
They're like, "Heck yeah, kill."
But I
Which
mean,
is like
internet separates us from,
for
yeah,
accountability and
accountability and
reality as
reality.
well. Mhm.
Yeah. Ooh, we said that at the same time. And so we're led to believe these are viewers that spend frequent nights with her. And so it's like really weird that they were so
Yeah.
eager for
So
her blood.
down, yeah.
There's a few people who are new, and that's kind of like comes through. There's a lot of like girls pining for certain attention because of money, because that's how they need the money. This is their job.
Yeah.
Um, it's a service industry,
Yeah.
period. So we learned quite a lot about Alice in the beginning. She is a playful cam girl who enjoys creating fun new experiences with her fans. She keeps a calendar of all the different things that she's tried, and it's a mix of just like hanging out in certain ways, but she's just makes herself like a pleasant person that is yours. Like,
Yeah.
like, come hang out with me. We're best friends. And we're gonna do this crazy fun thing. And then also she's gonna get off. So it's fun.
Yeah.
She's anxious to break the top 50 charts. That's like her big goal. She's close to her mother and younger brother, the latter of which knows of her escapades. And she is waiting to get to the top of the charts before letting her mother know, hoping that she would be proud of her. And
Yeah.
she separates her life from her profession in that way.
Mhm.
But it's not out of like shame. I want that to be very clear. And that's one of my favorite parts, and I will get there. She doesn't tell her fans that she loves them, and she never fakes an orgasm. She has these clear rules that she follows to in order to kind of keep her brand, right? And her desperation for the top of the chart peaks after a close call during a dinner date with her fans. They break the top 50, only for her to fall rapidly down as another creator taunts the fans to watch her instead.
Yeah.
Because this other creator, Princess X, is adamantly never nude, only offering to remove clothing for every 10 spots that Lola drops. And writer Issa Mazai explained her idea of Alice as wanting to express the anxiety around my own digital identity, and I was depriving my personal validation from my performance and from my digital persona's validation. It was this constant anxiety of, do my viewers like me? Do they just like the persona I've created? And also, how much of my persona is real?
Mm.
Because writer Mazai was formerly a sex worker, so
Mm.
all of these are her life. And so, well, minus the scary.
Yeah.
um, in an act of desperation, Alice agrees to do this like duo show, this combination show with a fellow creator, and this time astride the Vibratron, which is rumored to do irreparable damage to her clitoris. And even despite the many warnings from friends and competitors alike, she endures, even breaking a precious rule in the process and fakes an orgasm so it'll stop.
Yeah.
And she finally breaks it. She breaks the 50, and like rises up because of this experience, because people are already fans of her. They see her do this.
Mhm.
That's how desperate she is. The morning after her hard-won success, she hears strange sounds from her camming room and finds that she's still climbing the charts. She then discovers that someone is using her name, her channel, and her face to perform. And Alice immediately calls the website, which is like Girls for Money or something. It was like
Yeah.
girls equal like purchasable good. Like it was like really ridiculous.
Yeah.
But they get no help. It's like really infuriating. It's anyone who's had to fight Instagram to get their account back
Yeah.
knows how aggravating that is. The film becomes
Yeah.
increasingly uncomfortable as she seeks justice, turning any which way she can for help, only to be denied, abused, and disrespected every time. There is no end to the horrors. Because, as Kat had mentioned, one of her viewers finds her IRL and a true
Mhm.
terror as he attempts to remove the barrier that she's placed, seeing her only as Lola, even calling her such in person. Like,
Yeah.
that is how, like, he, in our first episode that we did about this, our guest talked about that, like how sometimes they just see you as this person that you're putting on like display and they forget that that's not you. So
Mhm.
they're expecting you to be that all the time. And they're
Yeah.
also expecting whatever relationship you're building up in that space to extend outside of that space,
Yeah. Which
which
isn't the case.
that's not the case, and that's terrifying, and she's very like, she tries to be very stern with him and is
Mhm.
just like, "This is not okay. You are crossing bound," like, she's very stern, just like,
Yeah.
"You
And
know what you're
direct, which
doing
is
is
good.
wrong." Yeah,
Yeah.
and, he's just like, "I love you, blah, blah, blah."
Yes.
It's stressful, it's stressful.
Yeah, very stressed.
Um, and then, the fake Lola is rising in the charts very very well, like very quickly, and she starts with similar content before completely disregarding Alice's rules, including telling her fans that she loves him.
Mhm.
She also has an on-camera suicide, but this time with a fun twist of a gun.
Yeah.
And Alice looks on in horror at her own death on camera, completely shook by the experience. Like it absolutely rattles her.
Yeah.
It's such an absurd, like it's a very tense moment in a way that like the opening, like fake unaliving was a little tense because you're like, what? What's going on? Oh my god! And you were more afraid of like what they were saying. And this one, you're like, what are they going to do to her? Um,
Yeah.
because now
Well,
they have
also, yeah, like,
control.
because the first time was based in, like, this consent, it was her decision to do that, and then this is, like, a person who is not her, she is not giving consent to this, so it's more horrifying because you, like, don't know how it's happening.
Yeah.
Could, like I know it's happening on screen, that person looks like me, is that gonna happen to me in real life? Like, there's a lot at play, I think,
You
that
also
makes it
like
really
you're
scary.
seeing yourself
Mhm.
do that. Like,
Yeah.
and it's not you. Like, that's so like, I can't imagine. And so
Yeah.
she's absolutely, like, oof, really
Mhm.
messes her up. And fake Lola also, goes to a public place, the library, to perform, which is not something that she ever did. Lola always stayed in her room.
Mhm.
And, it is this stream that Alice's younger brother's friends find online. They actually find it on a different website where someone had ripped the video and
Mhm.
re-uploaded it, which is theft.
Yeah.
So on top of the theft, which and that sign was that's website was like cash for girls or
Yeah, something
girls money.
additionally, like
Yeah, like we own these bodies.
yeah.
And so her brother's friends find this video and they're watching it at his birthday party, and then eventually they call her terrible names and accuse her of being terrible and all this other stuff. Yeah, his birthday, like clearly.
Yeah, clearly these aren't his real friends. Because, like, why would you think that would be, like, a good birthday thing to do?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and they're
Or
also
a thing
2
to do in
boys.
general,
And it's
but
also
yeah.
like society told them that she doesn't matter because she does this, right? Because he
Yeah.
knew that she did it, and he was fine with it.
He was
And
supportive,
again,
yeah.
she wasn't, like, afraid to tell her mom, she was waiting to tell her mom. So there's, like it's like, they didn't have that skewed way of looking at her in that way. So, it's very clearly just, like, they grew up thinking
Society, yeah.
she's now oh, this is a bad thing, and he's just like, how dare you. And it ruins his birthday obviously and reveals Alice's occupation to her mother before she was ready.
Yeah.
Eventually, the website doesn't even acknowledge her identity when she's trying to call it. She calls the police to find them. And unsurprisingly, they're unhelpful and also unsurprisingly, predatory.
Yep.
Super gross, awful time. One of the officers makes foul comments about her work, asking her, like, essentially, like, asking her if she'd be open to doing it. Not
Yeah.
understanding that, like, sex work has many different, like, parts to it. And also,
Mhm.
this is not the time. I am not Lola. Like, I'm Alice asking for help from authorities, like, super gross. And then the other one dismisses her completely, saying, "Stay off the internet."
Yeah.
Because to him, he's like, "You put yourself on the internet, it's your fault. You don't deserve anything."
Mhm.
So, she suffers from invasion of property, her personal world crumbling around her. And fake Lola even goes as far as leaving the camming room and going into Alice's real room, which is
Mhm.
one of the more horrifying parts for Alice. Like, you can see how upset she is that there's this such intense invasion of property, like of privacy, where they're
Mhm.
coming in. Like, she's saying, like, "Stay out, like, don't come in here," and just sobbing, pleading with them to leave her space. Because now it's
Mhm.
like, that again, that was Lola, this is Alice, and now you're in Alice's space. And then she
Mhm.
goes even farther by showing the fans photos of her life, including one of her younger brother.
Yeah.
Wh It's so horrible.
Mhm.
And even outside of the supernatural, the film boasts some truly uncomfortable and horrifying things. So, one of the cam girls that, mentioned previously, Princess X, who is never nude. In one of the scenes, she complains at the insistence of her viewers to disrobe because there's this blatant disrespect at her rules, and it shows how they see her as an object and not a human.
Yeah.
The house in which all the girls live, like, it was like the cam hotel or something. It was, like, clearly a place where they, all stayed and were able to support each other. Um,
Mhm.
but the fact that all of them knew about the horrors of the Vibratron, like, they
Mhm.
were like, "This is horrible." The website she cams for is titled something like Money for Girls, and her videos can be found on other sites, after being stolen from her on things like Cash for Girls, whatever, right?
Mhm.
And as a content creator, the idea of having your account and your livelihood stolen and profited on by another is terrifying in and of itself. And to have your brand corrupted, your morals and rules undermined. Alice discovers that this supernatural being, the imposter, is a part of a bigger insidious scheme, one that has stolen the accounts of many camp girls. And turns out the number one cam girl is actually dead in reality and is
Mhm.
now at the top of the charts as this imposter, one of which has no limits, right? They
Mhm.
can stream all day. They have no rules and no boundaries, right? So they are set free. They could do whatever they want. And so they can keep giving the fans what they want. Because I think at one point she says, like, how do I stay up in the charts? Like, never sleep. And as a
Mhm.
content creator, burnout is very real. Like, people having to, like,
Yeah.
we are always burnt out. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we are weekly and we're just an hour of just us talking. I can't imagine the ones who do, like, these really intense, like, highly
Elaborate.
edited
Yeah.
pieces. It's a big strain and there's a lot of pressure to
That's why a
complete.
lot like of people too like will have teams.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
have teams.
We don't have
Lots of
teams.
people
It's
don't have
tough.
teams, and people will assume people have teams that don't have teams. It's just like you and
Yeah.
your office.
Yeah, just me, sad. I
Yeah.
don't get to sleep anymore. And much of the themes covered in this film, as I say before, reminded me of Perfect Blue and Mima's struggles with identity and the commodification of her being, and how people thought they had any right to her as a being because she was on the screen.
Mhm.
However, I truly appreciated this film's approach to Alice and or Lola's claim to fame. Because while I was doing research for this episode, I was looking up other, like, OnlyFans horror stories. I was trying to look at, like, real ones,
Mhm.
or other horror films, maybe. And all of them were about these women needing to use OnlyFans or some other service because they're in dire straits. It was all
Mhm.
like the horror was that they had to turn to sex work to be able
Mm.
to pay their bills. Like, I couldn't, like, I kept trying to watch them and I would get like a minute in and they would establish that and it would just be this, like, degradation of her on screen and they're like, "Isn't this horrible?" And I was like, "You're totally missing like, you're discrediting and
Yeah.
belittling any of those content creators who do that as their job and that, like, are proud of that and, like, find strength in that, in this um persona, as the writer said, right? Like, this is your person, like you're performing in any way that any other creator would do. And so to
Mhm.
say like, oh, look at like the horrors being someone just simply asking her to take off her clothes, and it's just like some people just do that and they do a really good job. Like,
Yeah, and, like, there's lots of people who, like, really love it, like, get into it for fun, like, in
yeah.
addition to work, like and the painting it as it's only ever happens in these, like, dire straight situations definitely is gross.
Yeah, it takes the strength that like out of them. It just like it's belittling. Like, I just think of any, like,
Yeah.
burlesque performer, like, they are amazingly talented. Like,
Mhm.
though, and they're doing that, right? Like, they're taking off their clothes, but it's absolutely a phenomenal work. It's hard work. They have to
Mhm.
choreograph, they have to put so much effort into their appearance, and it's like it is an art form. And the same thing even just with any of the sex work, right? OnlyFans, all of those things, like, people have what they do, and it is
Mhm.
usually a point of pride. It's their job. And so just be like, oh, the last resort. And
Yeah.
they miss the point completely, because what they should be commenting on is just like how gross those like the audience members of those people are. Like, that's not the problem. It's just like, look at this poor pathetic woman
Mhm.
who wants to get naked, not like look at these men who are demanding this clearly uncomfortable woman to do that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, anyway, uh getting off this soapbox for a minute because I could go for days. Like, let's talk about society.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how we don't value women anyway, or pay people enough that they would have to resort to something that they don't enjoy. Whatever.
Yeah.
Could go on forever, which is again why I really, really enjoyed this one, because in Cam, Alice is never ashamed of her work. Even her
Yeah.
hesitation in telling her mother isn't from a fear of disapproval, but because she wants to show her how good she is at it.
Yeah.
Later, after her mother is found out, we see that this was a realistic approach, as her mother isn't ashamed or disappointed in her. Um, in fact, she explains she understands her and she sees the confidence that she exudes on camera, the beauty and pride that she feels. She says, I get this Alice, right? I get this Alice who's in her comfortable clothes and is quiet and reserved. And then I see that Alice, and she's different, right? I see Lola, who is confident and funny and charming. And it
Yeah.
was really like a point of appreciation. And that's exactly what Alice was like aiming for. And I was like, that's beautiful. Um, and she explains all like, why she does what she does. And even
Mhm.
in the shadow of the fact that there's this imposter that's stealing her, like she's trying to like get her mom to understand that, there was still a beauty in that moment. And
Mhm.
in the end, Alice figures out how to get her channel back, and in a rather clever play, Alice challenges Lola to a game, the winner of which will get the channel. Um, and after some like really intense uh abuse, self-abuse,
Yeah.
to kind of show how um unreal the new Lola is, she gets her channel back. She wins.
Yeah.
And she wins the fan, so she gets into her account, she logs in, and she shuts it down.
Yeah.
However, this is not the end, because camming is exactly what Alice wants to do. So because they like shut it down, I was like, oh, like
Yeah, like, she's just not gonna
I
do it
thought she was just gonna
anymore.
go get I thought she was gonna cash out. I
Mhm.
was like, "Get in there and cash out right now. Send it to my account and then close it." But she just closed it, and I was like, "Oh, no." But then that's not the end. So she kinda fixes herself up because she's looking a little rough. Her mom helps her, which is really cute. She
Yeah.
has a nice wig, she has a new persona, and, she decides to open a new account in the end, not letting this situation destroy her dreams. So she even explains to her mother that if it happens again, she'll destroy that imposter too, and she'll make a new account.
Yeah.
Um, because in the end, the monster was not her choice of career, but it was that it was stolen from her.
Mhm.
This approach is thanks to the writer, who had the experience in camming. It really influenced that approach because again,
Yeah.
there was no um, uh, like sadness behind what her job was. It was a sadness about like the
It being
people.
stolen, yeah, and the horrors of what people make, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And so Isa Mose had said about the kind of the motivation that she said sex work is work and it's normal. And that's what she wanted people to understand. And much of the
Hmm.
cam experiences came from her own life. The users that we see on screen are inspired by the personality that she saw in her own streams. And after having her own work stolen and put on Pornhub, Mose explained the feeling of alienation, explaining that there was a disembodied version of myself that I was completely alienated from, and that was terrifying. I was seeing this form of myself that was no longer me, but it was me,
Hmm.
which is literally exactly what she was experiencing. And Mazet's goal was to show the normalcy of this line of work as well, that it's normal and that constant criticism because we don't understand it or like regular people don't understand it. And she said, I think what's so frustrating is that sex work is the only career where we demand that it be empowering or we assume that it's exploitative and we don't let it exist in a nuanced space for what it is. We don't demand of a waitress or a programmer or a writer or a retail clerk that their job be empowering. But we also don't assume that there's some sort of victim for having chosen to sell clothes at Forever 21.
Yeah.
Like we completely invalidate their experiences, right? Like
Hmm.
all those other OnlyFans horror stories. Um, the writer's experience outside of camming in simply trying to pitch the script was equally alarming and horrifying. So, in this article on Daily Dot, which is where I found all these quotes, titled Netflix thriller Cam explores the fractured nature of online identity, they explain assumptions about sex work followed Maze when she tried to pitch the script with Goldhaber. Executives grilled her about the craziest sexual acts she's ever had to perform, and others weren't sure why she had to be involved. One guy rewrote the end of the script to include him and Maze in a demented kind of fan fiction. He saw it as a joke, while she saw it as sexual harassment. So that's
Yeah.
like, we literally see that with the cop. Like, I'm coming
Yeah.
here for me, real life, like, not my persona, me, human being, asking you for help to do your job. And you're asking me like something that's not even related to that other job.
Yeah.
Or also seeing like that blur of like her as a person instead only seeing her as a sex object that we like now I can write myself into the narrative because it's hilarious. And it's like you want to do that to anybody else. Right?
Yeah.
Like
It's super
in what
gross.
world would you write like an email? Let me show you this fan fiction I wrote about us. HR is gonna know.
Yeah.
But because she had previously done sex work, they're like, then she's not gonna mind it. She's
Hmm.
already like allowed that to happen to her. So now everything else is deserved. Um,
Yeah.
and then in the end,
Gross.
the yeah, the film is incredibly realistic despite the paranormal deepfake fiend. There is a gore, and it is certainly a horror film, but the real scares come from the sense of stolen identity, personal space, and disrespect by the world. It is a complex story that will get under the skin of any content creator whose very being is their selling point, their identity, the service, and their presence online, their livelihood.
Scary.
Yeah.
That's all what I'm gonna say too. It's similar vibes. In the this film just does like such an amazing job portraying, and it's like so crazy that the real person, like the real Maze, who
Hmm.
actually like experienced the lines, essentially, like those people inspired this gross scene with the police officers. That's just so crazy.
Yeah.
Like they literally say the same words that she says in this little quote. So that's wild.
Yeah. Especially
Um,
because it's like, okay, we can understand that like the commenters and the people in the cam world were inspired by her cam experiences. But then to say like, oh, all the horrors of reality she also experienced, like
yeah.
a never ending. I'm so glad she was able to do it. And, she was able to find success with the same studio that did Get Out, right? Like they understood
Hmm.
the validity of this story. And so thankful that and that she was able to be a part of it for them to be like, why do you have to be here? Like that's so like, are
Because if
you
she
kidding?
wasn't,
It's
then
a
they would
true
have made it.
story.
Yeah. Also, and if she wasn't, they would have bastardized the ending to make it like not the great story that it was.
Yeah.
Because they clearly had their all already preconceived notions of what sex work is,
Yeah.
and were totally fine just devaluing her presence on set.
Yeah.
So
They would have just been like the same villains. Like it would have just they would have been harming her the way that the fictional villains were harming her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah.